Today, I'm sitting down with Josef Chen, the founder and CEO of Kaikaku. Kaikaku is a food robotics and AI company building what Josef refers to as the next generation restaurant operating system. What does that mean? Well, they're building a completely vertically integrated solution from scratch that includes robotics, software, and AI to power the entire back end of a restaurant. Joseph's vision here is to deliver a business in a box to entrepreneurs all over the world so they can run their own efficient, profitable restaurant enterprises and focus their day to day on what they should be focusing on, which is the hospitality and human component to running a restaurant.
Food is one of the most basic needs that every single human being has. However, as you receive good food and healthy food, you start thinking about other more important things such as human connection.
Now, Josef is a special guy. You'll see why after listening to this conversation. I'm not going to get into it here, but he's extremely thoughtful, maniacal about the problem he's looking to solve. And the thing that I resonated with most is he is really dedicated to figuring out how we can use technology to bring us closer together as humans rather than splitting us far apart. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. This is one of my favorite ones yet. And remember to go direct. Okay, cool, man. How you doing tonight?
Very, very well. How are you?
Good, thanks, man. Well, this one, I always say it each week, but this one I'm really excited for. And I'm going to talk a little bit longer than normal at the beginning, so I apologize to everyone having to hear me yap. But I have 3 points I need to address with you before we dive in, all right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so everyone who's listening knows, my view on vertical integration and software-infused AI. Software-infused hardware with AI is the future. It's how we're going to build a more decentralized economy. So that's obviously point one that we share a common approach to. Point two, I grew up working in restaurants.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, my dad owned a croissant shop in Detroit.
So cool.
Yeah, and I just grew up in the food service world, as a teenager, and my wife is French, so food plays a pretty big role in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gets me excited, but this is the one that put me over the top, and this is where I'm going to have to ramble, so I'm sorry. So I led to everyone there. We're going to put this in the show links. It's very important. I read Joseph's last piece, which is called The Black Death, and I'm going to have to read off my paper, but it literally is the bullseye of why I'm creating Going Direct, literally. And I say that, the why here is I believe technology can bring us closer together. It doesn't have to strip away our humanity. And so I'm gonna go through and read a little bit just because I think it's really important for the audience to hear this, and then I'll leave it open ended for you. All right.
I love this.
Okay, cool. All right. So the title of the essay is called "Alone Together: Disconnection is Our Generation's Black Death." The Black Death killed 100 million people in the 14th century. So what affects longevity the most? Harvard's longest-running study followed individuals from Boston's working-class neighborhoods and Ivy League campuses, including President JFK, to uncover what truly shapes long-term health and fulfillment. Is it wealth, status, or access to elite healthcare? It's human connection. Loneliness chronically activates the HPA axis and sympathetic nervous system, flooding the body with cortisol. Over time, this disrupts immune regulation, fuels systemic inflammation, and suppresses both T cell and natural killer cell activity, raising the risk of infection, cardiovascular disease, and premature death. And we'll put links to the studies here. It's as detrimental as alcohol or smoking. This is the new Black Death. So this is what got me really interested. Over the next decades, we will be together alone. We will still inhabit shared spaces, yet experience them as emotionally vacant. Proximity will no longer guarantee presence. AI will not only displace labor, it will erode social interaction. Increasingly, we will interact with machines rather than people because our infrastructure allowed nothing else. During the Black Death, people died without understanding how or why. That was medical helplessness, a visible crisis with invisible causes. Today, we face the opposite. Our health crisis is invisible, but the cause is everywhere around us. Chronic loneliness, social isolation, and emotional detachment are eroding our bodies from within, yet we fail to see it. That's psychosocial blindness, the inability to recognize how disconnection is quietly killing us, and we've normalized it. And then you go on to talk about how you're building differently, and I'll let you finish this sentence to kick it off, all right? When I started building, what's that?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Which sentence?
Are you ready? So when I started building, I understood this risk. So I'm building the future differently. And I'll let you take it from here. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so my core thesis is, and I've observed and spoken to so many people of how AI, software, even hard robotics is going to take over the world is as our entire lives become AI generated in emails, phone calls, even ordering at a restaurant will be somewhat, even today, digitalized. The rarity, the core currency that we as humans will have, that the one thing that we crave will be human connection, or at least genuine thought of another human being caring about us. And to prove this thesis, how we started the company was we built what we call a living laboratory, meaning we have real customers who actually, in some ways, are test subjects who pay us real money, who give us real complaints, come to the restaurant. They don't know anything about what's happening back behind the scenes, what's happening with the tech developments, and they just go through the entire experience. And even though this living laboratory is barely a year old, we're getting very, very interesting data points. And I write about it a little bit in my article, but it's really magical to see suddenly, for example, in our case, very much elderly people coming to our restaurant over and over again and becoming one of our core customer groups, even though you might think that they would hate to touch screens and touch screens was the only way for them to order, or they might hate to see a part of a robot that replaces a human task. So we just started asking them. We just every single time we see them, we would sit down. I would sit down and go out and say, "Hey, what brought you here? Why do you still come back?" And every single time they say, "You're one of the only places in London where it doesn't feel like a transaction, where it feels like people genuinely care about me." And to me, I feel like talking about longevity, and when people start talking about longevity and experiences, the effects of that, elderly people right now experience it the first. My take is in the next 5 years, all of us will experience it. And I would love to say it. I feel like all of us will feel together, but alone. And that's the whole inspiration of the essay. And lucky enough, I was able to experience firsthand these real people, our real customers in our laboratory telling me that story.
That's great. So let's move. I'm going to move over to food then, because you also write a quick sentence here around food. But connection alone isn't enough. You can't out socialize crap food or bad health. So talk to me about that. It's deep, and I think it's really important, kind of core to who you are, based even though we just met.
Yeah, so food has always been extremely important in my life, partly because I'm kind of traumatized by it, but also Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food is one of the most basic needs that every single human being has. However, as you receive good food and healthy food, you start thinking about other more important things, such as human connection. So my argument here was, before we can get people to recognize that, we need to serve everyone healthy, good, accessible food, and that's what the entire startup is about.
That's great. So, and can you just kind of give us, or I know what it means, but explain to the audience what kaikaku means?
So Kaikaku is Japanese for radical change. It's the next step of a word called Kaizen. You might have heard it from the Toyota manufacturing line, where it means continuous improvement. So on an assembly line, you would go and tell the employees, hey, just improve how you screw the screw in every single car after another. Kaikaku's meaning is we take the same principle but be more radical. So instead of having a human over optimizing how to screw a screw in, why don't you use electric screwdrivers?
Got it. And so, can you just tell us a little bit more about what you're building? Because it was kind of abstract at the beginning, purposefully, but kind of so people that don't come from the industry maybe will just kind of get it right away of what you're building at Kaikaku.
So I have a PR version of what we're building. Before we get to that,
Yeah.
I think the easiest way to understand and differentiate us from all of the other competitors out there is I would love to believe that I'm building a cult where you hire the best cracked engineers, lock them in a room with no sunlight, get them to experience all the pain in an extremely unsexy industry, in our case, restaurants, and really force them to build technology that works and really revolutionizes the restaurant industry. The PR version of that is we build a fully vertically integrated operating system from hardware to software to cloud to AI and deploy a plug and play solution, basically like a business, a tech-enabled business in a box for restaurants.
Okay, and so we're gonna break down this business in a box piece because most people aren't familiar with that. But so who very basically are kind of who is the customer of Kaikaku?
That's a great question. The ultimate goal of this business is we want to buy other restaurants and
Okay.
own them outright. The path to there would mean, and also for developing a product, a customer at the end of the day are, in the first instance, for our tech operators, people who deal with day-to-day pain of running restaurants, of the P&L, of thinking about how to, create a human connection, how to build up the brand. And we'd love to believe that we have built a tech platform that gives any operator the edge to really, really reinvest in everything else that matters.
Okay, and I read on the website you mentioned a restaurant called Common Room. So kind of just talk to us about how you kind of worked with them early on.
So Common Room is actually our own restaurant.
Okay.
That's a living laboratory. A bit of history. Fun fact, I think it's the first time I talk about it publicly. Common Room was a GPT-generated name. Everything in this restaurant was GPT generated / inspired, from the furniture to the color to the name and the slogan. And what it is, to visualize it, imagine walking past a random street, in our case, in the middle of London, near Russell Square. We're based in Brunswick Center, which is one of the open air shopping centers here. It's not a very busy area, but it's very much a mixed audience. So you see this very homely feeling restaurant with full of IKEA furniture, which makes it very mediocre and homely. But then you walk in, you don't notice much. You see a tablet. You can order food. In our case, bowls, if you know sweet green or salad type bowls. That's what we sell here. And in that sense, Common Room is we made our own customer because me and my team run this restaurant every single day. We need to make sure the staff understand how to serve food. We need to make sure customers are happy, the consumers who come around and go in and eat our food. We need to make sure the operators, in our case, we have an operations manager, really understand how to operate this novel technology. And that's what we do day to day.
Got it. And so does it just feel like you walk into a fast casual restaurant with a kiosk? Is that kind of the feeling you get? I mean, if I were to be very basic about it.
Yes, it's extremely, extremely basic by design. So the counter, nothing is fixed. Even the furniture, nothing is fixed in the restaurant. So we move things around. We would stand behind a one-way mirror. That's where all the engineers sit, including myself, and just observe things day by day. One interesting thing is once you come in, especially during lunch rush, you'll see a robot roaring around. I call it a robot, but it's a very simple machine where you just put an empty bowl in, and it assembles, let's say, a bowl with 12 ingredients with the perfect amount every single time. And what surprises us, for example, in that case, is we thought that people would care more about the robot. People would take photos, people would look at it. In reality, over 90%, I would say even 95% of people just don't give a damn about the robot. They just come in, they buy the food, and we looked into the data and realized actually that is the best way of retaining a customer, because they don't come back for the gimmick, they don't come back for the entertainment, because that market is much smaller, just like you don't go to the same theater every time. If you can capture customer to come back for the food and the experience and the human connection, that's when we have literally people coming every single day, 30 days a month.
Interesting. I love that you're like behind a one-way mirror. Now I have to come see it.
You have to come see it. You should peek through the window. I'm very sure you'll see my eyes looking at you.
Okay, so you made an interesting comment around the initial kind of robotic system focused on mixing ingredients. How did you decide which movements to prioritize and like where to start when building the concept?
Great question. We began by just scoping out the entire market. I spoke to probably every single founder or in food robotics. I looked at every single technical challenge, from these washing machine style robots where you put in food and it just keeps tumbling and heating up food, to pasta robots. If you're in Paris, there's an incredible restaurant called Carla that is also robot powered. Took great inspiration from them. And we ultimately landed on not necessarily a cuisine, but on the technological frontier which is on-premise food dispensing. Now, that sounds very simple, but in reality, it's so freaking hard. Not even the largest industries have figured it out, which is how the heck do you tell a motor, I want 30 grams of, let's say, cucumbers, and it gives me exactly 30 grams. If you dive more into technicals, it's extremely hard to accurately and consistently dispense what we call non-homogeneous items. Salad leaf sometimes is more dense, sometimes it's less dense, sometimes it's wet, sometimes not wet. How do you dispense that accurately every single time? And as a result of that, we just dove down in a big rabbit hole. We just scoped out and tried to find the best people in the world who can solve it. In this case, actually, thank God to one of our advisors who was the former chief science officer of Mars, who has scoped out in the market for their factories, obviously from chocolate to Uncle Ben's to pet food. And alongside him, we developed not just a system that can dispense food accurately, but also create, more importantly, iteration system where we can deploy 3D printed parts in a real restaurant where we can test and prove to everyone that it is food safe. And the end result of that is we literally have sub 1 day iteration cycles in hardware. And the way to do and crack the food dispensing problem was you would literally have to dispense thousands of bowls, iterate the smallest angles of the hardware every single day, put it out in the wild, and keep going. So it took us 2 years in a dark room with no sunlight to figure it out. We are very much not done yet. It's never going to be perfect, but we have achieved human accuracy at least.
And how, just so I make sure I understand, you made this comment around having 3D printed parts, like related to what specifically? Like to the robotic system, or 3D printed parts that are like as a bowl or some other supplier that you're using to serve the food?
Great question. It's all the systems, the robotic systems.
Okay.
Almost the entire thing is 3D printed besides the structure that holds everything apart.
Okay. Got it. So would you say, if I were to kind of look at the general competitive landscape based upon what you've shared where you are today, but kind of the vision, would kind of what Travis Kalanick building at Cloud Kitchens, would you kind of say that's probably the closest to the approach that you're taking?
Yeah, so the end product, the goal to the product is very similar, which is, can you build tech that is plug and play that will take care of all the painful things? In our case, if you want to open a bowl restaurant, can you just make the bowls?
Sure.
The key difference there is, and this is how we see ourselves actually more newer towards Sweetgreen. Sweetgreen has launched an incredible piece of tech. They call it the Infinite Kitchen in the real restaurants. And also how they launched it was they opened the first pilot restaurant somewhere in Illinois next to Chicago, had real customers in, and just iterated the system. How we see ourselves and why we think we are drastically better is we built the same system as Sweetgreen has within 2 years of founding from scratch with nothing. And Sweetgreen bought a company called Spice before with a team that's literally 90% smaller. Yet our system does the same thing and is at the same time more than 90% cheaper to produce because we've gone through all these hundreds of iteration cycles within a year.
Yeah, and you're starting from scratch. So you're really kind of like integrate. I would assume you're actually an integrator where you're integrating a bunch of different technologies. I don't want to speak for you, but you're probably building some stuff off the shelf. Some stuff's off the shelf. Some stuff's custom, right? Is that right? Or
Yes, absolutely. The simplest way to understand it for Elon Musk fans is we take the SpaceX approach, where we just looked into the market, including really studying all the machines, including Sweetgreen ones, and we realized, wait a minute, if we just build every single piece in-house, from simple things like conveyor belts to dispensing modules to the frame itself, we would save over 95% of cost. Conveyor belt is a good example because if you go out and try to buy a food-safe conveyor belt, it will cost you $2,000 for a feet. By us designing it ourselves, fully in-house and manufacturing in-house, costs us $100. And this is the same realization that SpaceX had when they tried to buy a Russian rocket and realized, okay, if we just do it ourselves, the rocket will be much better because it's fully vertically integrated and it's much cheaper to manufacture at scale. And this allowed SpaceX to really hone in on the hardest problems. Like I'm sure you saw the chopstick video. In our case, food dispensing, cooking, all of the things require such precision, real-time communication with every single part. We require so much knowledge about every single piece of the puzzle. The only way to achieve that is if you have a fully vertically integrated system without, well, fancy ABB sensors, left, right, and center, and 5 different suppliers supplying you the same thing. And very much that's the biggest trend we see, not just in all the frontier tech, but also in cars. Like every single car manufacturer now is trying to vertically integrate their software stack.
Good luck with that, guys. Have you, just as a random side note, have you looked at, as part of your stack, looked at, because you're in food service, the HPP processing at all? Or HPP technology, I should say. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
It was curious. It was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was invented originally in Japan, and it's a food preservation method that you basically take. You could do things like you can do deli meats, juice, dips, anything. You actually have to use a plastic bottle, but essentially you put in a cold bath and it heats it up to like insane pressure. I think it's like 70,000 psi or something, some crazy amount. But then what it does is it kills all the bacteria, but it maintains the nutritional integrity of the product.
Yeah.
And with like 120, 150-day shelf life. And so I don't know. I just didn't know if you had come across it in what you're doing, because it might be an interesting thing for one of the guys to, or gals to, take a
Yes.
look at some point.
Not there yet. This is actually I heard you mention because Dave Green, our advisor from Mars, who's now retired, he was crazy. Like he was just telling us about the technology all the time, because that, for example, created Uncle Ben's rice, and it didn't exist before, and it really just opened up all the categories for someone like Mars.
Sure. So in your mind, what has been the biggest blocker that we don't see more robots like deployed commercially in restaurants or in the food space? Because it just seems like such an obvious use case.
The short answer to that is, I think nobody has been willing to take as much pain to just get it done and integrated so far. A lot of our competitors, unfortunately, a lot of them have failed, either took the wrong approach or didn't live long enough to bear the fruits. And in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. You know, whether it's housing, I know you spoke to Alex from QB, or all the other industries, solar energy. It's a no-brainer. However, operationally, it's just so tough. Not even the biggest players, McDonald's, Restaurant Brands International, have done it. And I believe the only way to get there is if you just literally chew glass every single day and solve all the integration problems. I think that's the biggest thing with robotics. It's not as simple as just putting a robot somewhere in a human design environment. You have to design an entire environment from scratch. And this is also, I think, logistics and warehousing is more advanced nowadays, where you would see the most efficient warehouses are actually not human-based warehouses where you try to squeeze in a robot, and the robot's task number one is not to kill a human, but to create warehouses where automation and tech is number one priority.
How does the bipedal or humanoid form factor play a role in kind of where you guys are going?
So I don't think we will ever start building it just because our skill sets. I think there's so many better teams out there who can do that. My take is generalized robotics. A lot of grifters in this space, so I'm by default a bit dubious if and how quickly they will come. But the core principle I have is, even if they work like a human, they will not change the industry, in the sense of, why would you put a humanoid bipedal robot assembly your salad that will not be faster than any human? You will still need tens of those behind the line. If you can build specialized robotics that is going to assemble hundreds of bowls in an hour.
Got it. If, as you're talking to a lot of your early customers, right? Because you're initially selling your stack, or looking to sell your stack to them, are they typically just kind of looking as you as your automation is like an all-in-one solution? Or are they kind of looking to piece together different automations or robotic systems for their specific use case? Have you found?
So why now is actually the fact that they are now looking for all-in-one solutions, whether it's software or hardware. Everything in this industry is slowly aggregating. So to answer your question, actually, even 5 to 10 years ago, they would just try to buy one piece of technology. And I think sushi robots was one of the most obvious over the past 10 years, where you had the machine that can make sushi wraps. But then they slowly all realized, or I'm sure you've heard of robots that can flip burgers. Both of those cases, the operators realized you need to now, instead of hiring someone who can flip a burger or just roll a sushi roll, they need to know how to click 20 buttons and know how to troubleshoot this machine. It's a much more niche skill set. So there's this industry-wide recognition of, wait, if we do this, we have to go all in. It can't be just a small piece that you try to squeeze into operations.
You talked about the importance of fast iteration cycles. So talk to me about where you see the state of the industry on just the pure kind of software training side, because we know kind of that's the biggest blocker in embodied or physical AI, which you've kind of already mentioned. But I don't know, kind of what you're on the ground there every day. What are you guys seeing? Is it much further out than what people think? Who knows? What does your gut tell you?
If you try to create a generalized robot company in food, there's not enough data. I don't think that you can feasibly generate enough data in the short amount of time. Beginning with food dispensing, there's literally zero data out there that told us properly how to do dispensing of cucumbers, carrots, rice, leaves, etc. So we had to figure it out ourselves. And actually, one of our core disciplines and why we think we'll win is we collect all those data. Every single bowl we track, we take pictures after each dispense. We would take load cell readings. Basically, load cells are small weighing scales, extremely precise ones, and really just train and hone in on our algorithm to create, hopefully, a generalizable algorithm or AI where you can tell it I want 30 grams of whatever, and it can get me that consistently.
So are you kind of using a mix of like open source libraries on the software side, and then obviously you're building on top of that? Or are you kind of just building custom from the ground up?
So our default option is to try to use as much open source as possible. So
Okay.
small things like we use ROS, we use Foxglove to do all the diagnosis of the hardware systems. However, more often than not, we recognize for whatever reason, we have to build it ourselves. A very dumb example is we had to literally rewrite the entire firmware for a label printer from Brother, which is one of the largest printer manufacturers, because we were the only people in the entire world that called Brother support and said, hey, we struggle to print labels for our bowls that tell us what the ingredients are and with the QR code. And then we try to explain to them, look, we have our own custom built kiosk, our own cloud architecture around that. And in store, we have this robot that needs to get all this data into the label printer. So we rewrote the entire library for a freaking label printer just to get it to work. And that's the pain you have to go through, unfortunately, to achieve all the things that we are trying to achieve. But it's very fun.
Cool. How big's the team, and when did you guys start jamming on it?
So we started literally around 2 years ago. So 2023 in May was day zero. Began with just myself and one of our founding investors, which is a spin out fund from a consumer PE fund. And I just went out and searched for a top tier team. It took me God knows how many hours. I will play the entire dating playbook just to convince co-founders in hot and cold, social proof, all of the tips and tricks to assemble the top tier team. So we've been doing this for 2 years now. And what was your initial question?
How many people are you guys?
So right now we are 8 full time in core R&D,
Okay.
including just three very hardcore engineers, 10x engineers, one lab technician, plus myself, plus an ops manager, and a very unique profile, someone who has a PhD in molecular biology, is a Michelin trained chef from Le Cordon Bleu, and is Imperial College London's head of culinary education. So very interesting mix of people.
Eclectic. I like it.
Yeah, so extremely lean tech team plus 15 part-time on the ground restaurant staff.
Okay. All right, so a couple questions on the bigger picture vision, then we're gonna drop in, talk a little bit about robotics ecosystems because you kind of hit that a little bit, and also you wrote something about that I thought was interesting. So you wrote more people more than or and people more than ever want to own their own businesses. They look for efficient franchises, also known as business in a box. Our full stack tech will create the next gen tech enabled franchises. So tell me more about what do you mean by, like, how does that work in practice?
So franchise is misunderstood word in the sense of the way I see it. Franchise is just a business in a box, which includes something like a McDonald's or KFC. And my thesis is, as the world, I read a little bit about you as well. The creator economy. So an example, we worked with a creator called Eddie Ho. In fact, he opened the restaurant first. For those who don't know, he was the world's strongest man. And the joke was now he's also become the world's fastest chef. So we collabed and he came to open it. Everybody is in some ways having a identity crisis in the sense of, okay, if I'm a creator or a human being, how can I leave a lasting impact of a business? And in that case, what we think to creators, most people are so scared about starting restaurant businesses or even operating, buying, whatever, because the core discipline here is operational excellency, which actually not many people have. Can we take away that pain and enable anyone to operate an extremely good restaurant where you can, invest in the brand? If you're a creator, you have an audience, build that audience, nurture that audience, or if you really are passionate about a certain cuisine, really just go deep dive into the cuisine rather than the things that we experience every day: how to keep the toilets clean, how to make sure the bins are taken out, how to make sure everything is cleaned out, how to have enough staff to assemble the bowls, all of the BS behind the scenes that make the experience happen.
Great. My so on this point, this is a very interesting one. I actually just had a conversation. I don't know if you know Yoni and Megan over at Slow Ventures.
Yes, I know Yoni. Yes.
So I was talking to Yoni about this. We just actually did one a couple weeks ago, and I started my career very early on at a fund called Mainsail Partners. So it was more of a private equity model. And I think we were our first, it was the first fund, it was a $35 million fund, and they just raised $2 billion. So
Wow.
like they've just
Thanks to
completely,
you.
they just like completely like exploded, and their whole model is kind of bootstrap, software oriented, tech enabled businesses. And so, you know, independent of that, just what I've seen in the franchise world is just, it's become completely highly financialized by the private equity industry. And when you kind of look, I'm generalizing, of course, but what seems to be turning into, instead of giving a path for like local entrepreneurs to have much more independence, impact their local economies and their local communities like in a big way, it's just turns into kind of like efficiency extraction in a little bit. And then like the model's not set up actually to have someone to really kind of, I don't know, like determine their own path.
Yeah.
So when you use the term business in a box and franchise, I know we're kind of speaking the same language there, but I don't know, talk to me a little bit about like how this is different in your mind versus what I just blabbed on about.
So I think I'll go back to my previous point, and I think this is the reason why private equity had to do all these quote unquote ruthless things, which is the only way to win is if you have operational excellency. Rather than previously, I guess 100 years ago, restaurant and hospitality was about hospitality, about the human connection and how to reinvest in the community. And myself in the UK, I never got to experience what I would say the general pub culture, because nowadays every pub is owned by some private equity group and it feels soulless. You would still go there for the commodity, which is beer or food, but you don't go there anymore for human connection. And again, unfortunately, it's in one of those industries that were impacted through various things from labor costs to food costs and all of this. So it had to change. There was no choice, and private equity really just latched onto that and cut all those costs there. The way I see it is, and this is how I want to make an impact, if I can build technology that can, you have -1% net profit margin, can I turn it to plus 30% net profit by default or operating profit? then you have all the room to reinvest into the things that build a lasting business, not just a financially successful business, but a lasting business.
Yeah, it's a really important point. It's so fascinating to me. A lot of younger entrepreneurs that I speak with, like that core understanding of like what margin represents and why it's so important is that exact point where it's like if you don't make money, you can't reinvest to do more
Yes.
of the thing that you want to do. You know,
Yes.
got it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about robotics ecosystems.
Yes, please.
All right, so I spent a lot of time in France. My wife is French. I split my time between the U.S. and over here in Europe. And once again, I went through another one of your pieces where you wrote about this, more specifically in the UK, where I'm going to have to read again, but you discuss how this was about a year ago. So in August 2024, we're in May 2025. It was around how the UK's elite hardware talent's being wasted. So in the quote was, there's a generation of engineering prodigies whose talents are being squandered. This isn't just wage disparity, it's misallocation of human capital on a national scale. Can you unpack that for me, a bit, whatever direction you want to go with it?
Yeah. So I used to believe, and the whole reason why I came to the UK to study was I can meet all the most ambitious people. And I did, like from all the top universities, you do meet all the quote unquote most cracked people. But then the summary of the blog post is all of them just flock into lucrative, but not necessarily industries where they can unlock their unique advantage in the world. So it never made sense to me why someone who was disassembling microwaves and planes and everything at home and rebuilding them by the age they were teenagers, or building freaking reactors in their homes, they would go into investment banking, just shifts things around slides. Um, no doubt they are creating value in the world, but I feel like, and this is why I say it's such a waste of elite talent, specifically, and this is all I know about nowadays, hardware talent. And it's extremely grim to the sense where if you are top of your class at any good university or even better university, your career prospects, if you really want to chase your dream, if you really love hardware, you would go to a company. Not going to name drop any names, but there are certain subsets of companies in the UK that are very prestigious. You would do a very boring job for a few years, which could literally just be optimize these 5 screws for this single engine. And you get paid like 25K. You have to live outside of London. You really just lose the ambition and lose the pace of life that you used to at a top tier university. And yeah, so my call for action to everyone is, this is a massive arbitrage opportunity. If you want to build in hardware, specifically in robotics, I do believe Europe has incredible talent that is ready to be utilized and really unlock their unique advantage.
Oh man, there's a lot to unpack there. It's interesting. I talk about this all the time. Where I and France is different because there's a lot more, I would say, restrictions and constraints and different cultural aspects. But I constantly talk to folks in the innovation economy. So I've done some investing in France. I've been very particular about where, but for these reasons. And I just say the system works differently. So you have to kind of hack the system around company formation, capital strategy to work within the confines if you want to stay in Europe, you know? And what I find is folks try to kind of fit the, square peg in the round hole and try to build like they're in the US. And it's like, but you don't have that same, it's not the same thing on so many levels, which I won't get into now, but you know what I mean? So in your mind, how do we unlock that? I mean, it's just more folks like you who are just like maniacal about what you're trying to build. Is it just more builders to kind of you say go recruit and moonlight and attract these teams? Like, how do we do it?
The answer is all of the above. I think every single thing counts. The way I see me contributing is, I'm just a crazy guy. I'm going through this mission. I don't care whether I live or die. I'm all in. I would love to have more people doing the same thing. There are a lot of people now starting, a lot of extremely good teams being built right now. But also to all the students, like, if finance is not your passion, why do you over optimize into finance and consulting? It's prestigious, but this is not your unique advantage in the world. So just freaking build something. It might be painful in the short term, but that's how any movement begins. So every little counts.
No, I agree, man. I'm a kindred spirit on this one because, sometimes I talk to my wife and she's like, "You're crazy. Like, why are you're just like obsessed with this?" And I'm like, because we don't need more just capital allocators. We need builders. We need people that want to build. And our job as folks that have been fortunate and do have some resources and been through the gauntlet, if we can help them think through how to create the capital strategy and capital formation so they don't have to think about selling in 5 years or 7 years, how do you make it a long-term thing that just compounds for society, compounds for yourself, and compounds for your team, you know?
Yep, that's a dream. Honestly, I live and breathe this every single day.
That's great. All right, so now we're gonna get into your background a little bit, okay? So,
Sure.
the first thing obviously that I noticed, peeling potatoes at my parents' Chinese restaurant since age 6. So, living in the UK, I assume, born in China or born in the UK or born in
Actually,
Australia, Austria.
Austria,
Yeah.
exactly. Born and raised in Austria.
Okay.
I'm Austrian by passport. I'm
Okay.
Chinese by blood. Literally grew up in a Chinese restaurant,
Okay.
and that's where my parents were 24/7. So I literally got no choice but to hop in the restaurant, and by that nature, I would be forced to work all the freaking time.
So are the parents proud or like, what are you doing, man?
So they are, I think deep down they're very proud. They will never admit it.
Sure.
But there was this moment which actually fuels me much more nowadays. And I have another article fully dedicated to that.
Okay.
Because the moment, and I used to be, interning and doing fancy things like M&A, private, everything that's prestigious in Europe/in the UK. Suddenly my mom sees me, instead of wearing white collar shirts and suits to t-shirts every day, and then I tell her, "Mom, I'm gonna open a restaurant." All her hopes have died. Not just because for me, I'm doing a restaurant, but for those who don't know, in Chinese culture, if you have a son, your entire identity of a family is about what your son is doing. So instead of she coming out to her friends and saying, "My son does private equity," she now goes out and says, "My son opens and does restaurants." So I'm sure it's extremely painful, but like deep down, they're very proud that I chose my own path.
That's great. So is it the same it's the US? I always use this example which is really sad, where it's like if I'm in private equity or a trader and I do very well and live in a penthouse in New York and my sibling is a teacher teaching, third graders or, and is like an amazing teacher of the year, culturally in the US, it's like they're always talking about the trader,
Yeah.
not the teacher. Would you kind of, I'm oversimplifying, but would it be a similar kind of thing in the Chinese culture?
It's similar, but I think it's more simple in Chinese culture, which is it's all just about money.
Okay.
Doesn't matter how you make money, as long as you're wealthy. That's the status. And certain career paths have stable income and lots of money.
Sure. So I think you've hit on this a little bit more, but I just have to say the quote because I love the quote. Okay.
Please do.
All right. So for me, I'm sacrificing all of my standards temporarily to solve this problem. I'm building a cult, aka a startup, which means I already get zero sleep, zero sunlight, and probably inhale a worrying amount of 3D printing fumes. Honestly, what keeps me is the people. I'd rather share lunch with cracked engineers and obsessive PhDs than sit through another dinner party pretending to care how someone wants to die. Why do you care so much about this? Like, it's inspiring. You're a young guy, and like I'm inspired just speaking with you. But what's I don't know. Talk to me about like what's inside.
So longevity, I care or start generally caring more about because my grandpa, who used to carry me to kindergarten school almost every single day, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And every time I go, so he's in China right now. Every time I go visit him, it feels like a time clock ticking. So that's when the seed in me just started growing, and I have a very deep relationship with my grandma. We don't speak much, but it just hurts to see that someone I love is, nearing death. So that's the background about longevity, and the quote specifically actually is what I do. Frankly speaking, it's so freaking hard and it's so painful. Literally, there's no clean air in this room. Every single day is a new challenge. The only thing that gets me going is the people, like just the people I work with in this restaurant. That's the power I need. That's the motivation I need to just push through and punch through everything.
I didn't get the transition though. So how did you end up in the UK after being like growing up in Austria? So what brought you to the UK originally, and why stay there?
So I always wanted to leave Austria because I hated my parents. I hated restaurants, and they made me work in restaurants all the time. So what I would do as a teenager is, I kid you not, I would Google how to make money online at least once or twice a week. I got very lucky. I just hustled my way through another new piece of information to the internet. One of the only times I could do that was I went to, for whatever reason, a Catholic school in Upper Austria, and I convinced my headmaster that I'm Buddhist, which I'm not. So I got to skip all the Catholic lessons. I got to go to the school library, which they had a laptop, and I could use the laptop to Google how to make money online. Got very lucky from the age of 12 to 13, started building. The most successful one was Bitcoin Faucet, which is a website. You go there back in 2013, 14, because you search for free Bitcoin. You just heard about Bitcoin and how the way my site works. You don't spend any money. You have to click to my site 30 times over 30 days, let's say, and you get 0.00001 cent worth of Bitcoin. And I would get ad revenue. So roughly speaking, for every 10 cents I gave out, I made $1 back. And back then, it doesn't work anymore for those wondering. Google AdSense did not ban crypto projects yet. That was the killer. So I had a few 100,000 users, made a lot in crypto. And by the age of 19, after my military service in Austria, I said, okay, I'm going to leave Austria for good. And that's when I landed in the UK. Got rejected from Cambridge, so I went to Warwick and made incredible friends there.
That's great. And so, kind of just from a background, a technical standpoint, just kind of a self-taught software engineer, hardware engineer, both, like always kind of playing around hacking.
Definitely software.
Okay.
I was coding PHP, like the entire faucet was PHP. I was building websites for local restaurants that I knew. I wrote, I wrote almost all the software for the Austrian military that services the Austrian military sports centers, all the Olympic athletes. So I would say, because I'm self-taught, my code is kind of crap, but it works.
I like that. It's crap, but it works. So I have a nephew who's going off to university this next fall, and he's obsessed with robotics. He's always been into robotics. What do we need more of in the robotics space? What's your advice to all the teenagers who are just love it? They're in it. They're in the robotics clubs. It's very clearly a very exciting career path, but what should they focus on? A lot of them get frozen on what to do first.
That's a question I still think every day and discuss with the team, which is, what academic discipline do you really need? We live on the mantra of actually not future proving is the best way to crack robotics. And robotics in our eyes is actually not mechanical engineering or electrical engineering. It doesn't really matter whether you're extremely good in one or the other. It's better if you are, but it's all about the systems. It's like, if you're a good systems integrator, you're going to be an incredibly good roboticist. And within that, the problem that universities have, and my co-founder always talks about it almost every day, is instead of universities teaching you how to iterate fast nowadays, they teach you how to make sure you check a list of 300 checklists. It could be as crazy as, okay, you've designed this part, a plane that is flying on Earth. You have to also design it that it flies on Mars. So you have limitations on materials you can use. It's like all these things do not matter in the real world, but you're trained to do that. So my advice to any new student is, do well at university. Don't take it too seriously. All that counts is iteration speed, and please do not future-proof the heck out of it.
I like it. All right, we're gonna round the corner here, around third base. It's an American analogy, so sorry. Can you kind of give me one name of someone's work you follow? This could be both personal, professional, that's really kind of inspired you, that other, would be worth other folks checking into.
You mean writings or?
And literally anything that's just been like, it just free, open. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
So a person I followed personally, and this is why I was ambitious enough to get good grades and come to the UK to even go into finance, is my last boss. He runs a private equity firm called Proterra Partners. It's a food focused private equity firm. mainly doing now investments in frontier food projects in Asia. So he grew up in the same restaurant I grew up in. His parents owned the restaurant when my parents were working there. And what happened was my parents took the restaurant over when Tai, his name is, started embarking on finance. And one thing that my mom keeps telling me, and Tai really believes in, is the only way to escape hard labor is if you are so freaking smart and do so much intellectual, take so much intellectual pain. And so that really stuck with me. And after following him into investment banking across Hong Kong, London, New York, and all of that, and now into private equity, he was definitely an idol from early on. And I kept following in his stories, his work. He's an incredible family, and yeah, so it's a person that I follow.
That's great. And what's his name? We'll put it in the show notes.
It's Tai Lin.
Thailand. Okay. It's interesting, man. I won't go into the details because it's not highly relevant here, but I'm from Detroit originally, and I was very involved in kind of the revitalization and redevelopment efforts of the downtown and the city. It's my home, where I'm originally from. And it was a really interesting experience to your point around the value of mentorship, which I had, which was I was very fortunate with a few folks that kind of gave me a shot and, really helped enable me at some level. So I'm very thankful for that. But at the end of the day, it's pretty interesting. I found that, and maybe it was the cultural thing there. Maybe it was because people didn't have an economic opportunity for a long time with the city. I don't know what it was, but it was very transactional. Even that meant like the mentorship, which I find, which is, if they don't see a benefit business wise from continuing to engage with you. And I think just what you're saying just hits me like very deeply, which is like, if you just get someone that cares about you as a person, of course, there's a business relationship. It just goes such a long way in someone's life. And so I know
Oh,
I kind of always,
a
I
million
spent
percent.
a lot of time with people like younger folks to try and do that. However, it can be helpful,
I love that.
Yeah,
Love to hear that.
that's great. So last podcast you listened to, or one that comes to your mind?
I really enjoy listening to Jack Oldman's new podcast. I
Okay.
forgot the name of it, but he just gets incredible guests, mainly in the VC startup world. Obviously, the way he asks questions is quite refreshing, and also to me, for whatever reason, he just gets the speakers who might have already guests who might have already given 10 type of podcasts onto his podcast and talk about generally different things.
Who else should I have a conversation with at Going Direct?
I think you should speak to a guy named Sharik Hashmi,
Okay.
based in London. Incredible background. He worked for Scale AI, OpenAI, cracked software engineer, AI engineer. I think he built one of the first AI agents that played Dota for OpenAI. And
Okay.
then he sort of fell off the face of Earth and landed in London. And he has another huge inspiration for me to build Kaikaku the way I'm building it. He has a massive lab, like 2 to 3 connected warehouses in East London that nobody knows about.
Okay.
He builds humanoid, well, not necessarily humanoid robots, but robotics for your home. I won't take too much of his pitch. I'm gonna butcher it, but the way he does things is incredibly refreshing. He also doesn't believe in bipedal robots and stuff like that. And he also is going down the route of vertical integration. Yeah,
I like that one.
incredible
I might
person.
take you up on that
You
one.
should, you should.
How can people reach you?
Twitter, honestly, Twitter is the best way, I think. LinkedIn, I just get flooded with sales messages. Twitter, not yet. Or email joseph@kaikaku.ai. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, listen, I'm gonna end with one more of your quotes because you had a lot of good ones. So I
Thank you.
really,
Thanks,
what,
sure.
the older that I get, I'm like, I just love people reading. I love like I tell even folks that come pitch me on like investment, like send me a memo. I don't want a pitch deck. Just send me a memo so I understand like the thinking and where you're coming from. All right, so here you go. So yeah, I'll take your injections, your supplements, your son's blood, but I'd rather take a shared table, a warm meal, and someone who remembers my name. Let's hack death, not with AI, but with each other. So listen, I hope we'll get it. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to break some bread. It was really
I
fun.
would love to,
Yeah,
Jordan. I would love to.
cool, man. Well, once again, thanks again, Joseph. I know you're a busy man, and we'll see you guys on the other side.
Yes, sir. Sounds good.